It was about 30 years ago that tales of the Akashic Records crossed my paths. They sounded deliciously mysterious. The promise that everything that has ever been known and that would ever been known is stored somewhere in the ether, waiting for gifted psychics to rummage and withdraw whatever information was wanted. So of course I had to check that out. One of the first things I learned during my first 3-year retreat was that language is symbolic. Or in other words, we have evolved, and by we I mean all vertebrate life on this planet has evolved to think symbolically. We can reason it out. Our most ancient ancestors dwelt in the primordial ocean, and they could perceive prey and predators and react accordingly. In time, past perceptions were recalled, and potential perceptions were imagined. And so we have perception, recall, and imagination as the armature, our framework upon which our minds would evolve over long millennia. That's useful when decoding ancient texts. All language is symbolic. And the more something is used, the more similes are used. And the more similes are used, the more they become metaphors. What happens, the treacherous thing is, eventually metaphors can be confused with literal statements. And that is where fiction comes in. And I'm hearing a bizarre sound. I'm wondering if my volume is going odd. Okay, so I guess what we do is we get to play Lara Croft. We get to play Indiana Jones. Who wouldn't want to do that? But we get to do it with the gooey stuff between our ears. And so we return to Lao Tzu's notions of philosophical yin and yang, as opposed to medical yin and yang, which is completely different. So in philosophical yin and yang, we recognize that the path of making things happen, the path of being rigid and controlling, might take you several places, but peace and fulfillment are not one of them. So bringing that tidbit into our quest to rummage through the Akashic Records, we have to recognize that being rigid and being controlling will not get us what we want. So if we take a flexible approach and a laid-back approach, then it becomes very easy to look at the idea of the Akashic Records as a metaphor. And here's how it works. The path of Yang, the path of Sith, the path of Darth Sidious is about, hey, man, I want when I want it, because I want it, for as long as I want it. Or if you fancy a Merry Melodies Warner Brothers cartoon, remember the cartoon with Charles Lawton and Yosemite Sam and Bugs Bunny, where a German prince kept screaming, "Where's my Hassenpfeffer?" We can be like that, and it's not going to get us anywhere. So the trick is to exercise a passive mindfulness, which is lovely. Passive mindfulness sounds like it may be a winning answer in Scrabble. But how do we bring that into the spiritual path? Fortunately, we can rely on neuroscience, because every time we inhale, we access our sympathetic nervous system, which is wired not for active concentration, but to merely perceive, and to do so, and you've heard this before, vulnerably, passively, viscerally, and randomly. And so as we sit with our legs comfortably crossed, comfortably in all capital letters, with our posture impeccable, and as we find ourselves breathing in naturally, we will begin noticing stuff. Noticing things is involuntary. You'll know this the next time you try not to notice things. So we are wired to notice things. We're wired to notice sights and sounds and sensations, flavors, scents, and the like. We are also wired to notice emotions, intentions, thoughts, memories, imaginings, and even confabulations, which is a combination of the last two. And so that can very much be like skeet shooting. In skeet shooting, when you see it in movies, the guy with the rifle or the shotgun screams, pull, and all of a sudden a clay pigeon is shot across the screen, and then he fires at it. Well, as we sit in meditation, either A, conundrums will come up that we have forgotten about, or sometimes even answers come up. But what we do in the out-breath is what empowers the next in-breath. In other words, what we do with the next out-breath is what empowers our next perception or revelation. So let's take a look at what comes next. The visceral meditation. Every time we exhale, whether we know it or not, we access our parasympathetic nervous system, which is already wired for physical relaxation as well as mental release. Therefore, every time we inhale, it's perfectly appropriate to silently and mentally recite the demonstrative pronoun this. And every time we exhale, it works out quite well to silently and mentally recite the monosyllabic verb ease. And doing so, a delightful synergy begins to happen. A closed loop, if you will. Things come up and we release them. Things come up and we release them. And it's kind of like a pulled saltwater taffy machine you might have seen at a fair or an amusement park as a child. But Einstein said, well, let's forget Einstein for a second. There's a wonderful Robert De Niro movie titled 15 Minutes. In it, he gives advice. His character gives advice to the protagonist. We can't come back to a problem unless we first walk away from it. And in a very subtle sense, that's what we're doing in meditation. Things come up. We walk away. Things may come up again. We let them go. Kind of like when you're working at the desk and you've got a deadline, and that's when Pussycat decides they need your attention. And they might jump up on you. You might give them a token scritch. You put them back down, and they laugh, and they act as if to say, "Oh, silly man, silly minion, your existence is but to serve me." And they just jump right back on our lap or jump right back on our desk, all the while doing the love me dance and purring seductively. So in the same way that an amorous kitty cat or an affectionate kitty cat will not be denied, in a manner not dissimilar to Glenn Close uttering the famous words, "Oh no, I will not be ignored." Similarly, when conundrums arise or brainstorms arise, although we might relax in the very next phase of our respiration, it'll process back and forth, and it could very much feel as if ideas were coming out of nowhere, or opportunities for personal evolution, insights could come out of nowhere. It could feel like solutions were coming out of thin air, as if we were interfacing with an intangible library, or an intangible library replete with its own intangible research assistant. Now, I don't know about you, but my laziness is rivaled only by my cowardice. Who can forget the climax of The Portrait of Dorian Gray, when the protagonist sees that although he is unaged and quite handsome, after multiple lifetimes of greed and cruelty, his portrait has been disformed and disfigured and is hideous. And in his revulsion, he cannot help but slash at the portrait, and in doing so, the suspended aging rushes in upon him, killing him within the hour. Similarly, just like Dorian Gray, each of us occasionally feels scared to look within ourselves and see what unresolved gurk is roiling within the cauldron of our mind. Fortunately, we don't have to look. If we sit in meditation and breathe in and breathe out, the metaphoric Akashic attendants will bring things to our attention. Fortunately, fellow lazy bastards, what we gotta do with whatever comes up is relax during our next exhalation. Now, sometimes an idea comes that's so poignant, I reach for a nearby, whoopsie, that wasn't it. I reach for a nearby pen and yellow pad and jot it down. That doesn't happen all the time, but when it does, it's usually a good idea. And I don't know if you have ADHD like I do, but many of us folks who are neurodivergent have crummy memories and have to jot things down lest we forget about them. So the nice thing about quickly jotting something down is then you're safe to let go of it, and just return to the process of mindfulness and meditation. Now, this is Danji. Sometimes the idea we get is so compelling that we need to strike while the iron is hot, end our meditation, and go take action. And so then we're faced with a conundrum. Is the insight the enemy of meditation, or is meditation the servant of insight? Which, of course, reminds me of something Jesus said. Man was not made for the Sabbath was made for man. We are not slaves to meditation. Meditation is a tool that serves us. And so, if there's something going on in your life, and in meditation the answer finally crashes in upon you orgasmically, metaphorically speaking, and you feel that this is the right time to act on it, then do so. And when your inner voice, your inner critic begins to chew you out, blame good old Lama Jigme. I can be not your veritable, but your I can be something very similar to your version of a note from Epstein's mom. If you're as OG as myself and remember, welcome back, Cotter. I think it could be great fun together to chant the Thursday night selection of the first Dzogchen meditation manual. Its title is The Vast Expanse of Vajrasattva. It was composed by Gaurab Dorje. It was translated by Yeshe Donden and adapted as well as amplified by yours truly. But before we do, allow me to remind you that if at any point during the remainder of this live stream, any point at all, you have a specific question about Buddhist meditation, Buddhist philosophy, or how to apply them to your life, simply type the question in great detail in the chat window, which if you're on a laptop or a desktop could be on the right, and if you're on a smartphone could be down below. Together. The essence is one, unstructured, unborn, and the way of the yogi is like the path of a bird in the sky. How then can we suppose that phenomena actually exist? So, regardless of what we notice when we breathe in, when we relax into our exhalation, whatever we noticed during our previous inhalation could feel as if it was as non-graspable as if it had never been born. As we relax into our exhalation, whatever we noticed during our inhalation could feel as all that we noticed this evening could feel as if it was one in their non-graspable essence. And this non-graspable essence is just a metaphor for what it feels like to relax. So we don't have to prance about the countryside pretending that things don't really exist. All we got to do is notice as we breathe in and relax as we breathe out, and everything else will work itself out. This path can be scary for those of us who are raised with great adventure, with great misadventure. We can take comfort in the illusion of a path and the illusion of an agenda. But this is an agenda-free path. For as we breathe in and we breathe out, as we notice, as we relax, we generate not a scattered spontaneity, but a centered spontaneity. And this becomes the navigator, that it guides, as it were, our choices, our utterances, our deeds, and we find ourselves flowing upon a path that defies logic and planning and anticipation. Let's continue. Inner and outer phenomena are both of one real condition, which is not an object to be grasped by the conceptual mind. We could notice the inner, the outer, the inner, the physical, the mental. We could notice the pleasurable, the painful, the interesting, and the boring. We could notice the glorious and the grotesque. But whatever we notice, we can release it, at least to a certain degree, during each exhalation. Together. The things of this world are mayonnaise based on mistaken concepts, and so it is we fail to experience the equality of deep contemplation. There are various accounts of creation. In various creation myths, the first man is asked to name all the plants and all the animals and all the phenomena. And there is something in each of us, a facet, if you will, of our controlling tendencies that says, if I can't control something, at least I can understand it. And if I can't understand it, at least I can label it. Mwahaha! They said I was mad at the university. And so, quite often our enthusiasm to label things is just a manifestation of our controlling tendencies. And indulging our controlling tendencies is the opposite of yin. It's yang. It's the opposite of letting go. It's the opposite of being flexible. It's the opposite of being laid back. It's the opposite of relaxing and releasing. And therefore, fortunately, even those tendencies, which we can notice as we breathe in, we can release, at least to a certain degree, with each exhalation. Let's continue. The outer and inner spiritual commitments that we take up pertain to the constituents and senses of the body-mind, which has never been other than the true condition. So all these things, our outer commitments, our behavioral commitments, our circumstantial commitments, our interpersonal commitments, our mental commitments, are each non-graspable, or experienced as non-graspable during our relaxing exhalation. Therefore, worrying about conduct, worrying about rules, is only an analog of spirituality. If we have to be told not to be cruel, then in the words of as Bugs Bunny said to Daffy Duck, I think we took a wrong turn at Albuquerque. You see, my friends, at the bottom of our brain is a fear center that the big kids call an amygdala. And the litmus test of a successful meditation is that bottom area stops letting up. And the area a little bit higher than the midbrain, a little bit forward of the midbrain, called the anterior cingulate gyrus, that functions as the seat of empathy, the hub of our mirror neurons, that does begin to light up. It's like a toggle switch or a teeter-totter. We can be in fear or we can be in love. We can be in the underbrain or we can be almost a little bit close to our midbrain. Therefore, the ethics of true spirituality is love, spontaneous and uncontrived, and utterly centered. When our choices and our utterances and our deeds are under the influence of centered spontaneity and love, we can do no great harm. We might make an error here or there, but it's not going to be malicious. And if we persist in our centered spontaneity, we will be less defensive and more curious and enthusiastic about the distinctions we make to do a better and better job of meeting others' needs. Therefore, meditation and its empathetic and spontaneous side effect make rules and regulations unnecessary. I am a coward. I am, like most people with ADHD, I tend to be a people pleaser. I don't want to alienate myself from others. But, like most people with autism, when my insights run contrary to dogma, I can't help but speak out. And so I will tell people, I will converse with other teachers or people who fancy themselves students when they start talking about rules and ethics, and just say, hey man, when you read the Eightfold Path, 50% of the Eightfold Path is just love and kindness. 25% of love and kindness is just love, which is wishing love, wishing others well. 3/4 of loving kindness is just conduct, kind communication, kind conduct, and kind commerce. Not being a Karen trying to get people fired, not being a Chad trying to drive people out of business, being loving in every area of our life. There was a time in Buddhism when those were the only rules. Be a person of love. But just as June bugs are drawn to a front porch light, people of patriarchy, people who are rigid, fearful, controlling, elitist, crypto, competitive, and cruel are drawn to positions of power and authority. And once they claw and scrape their positions themselves into those positions, they start handing out edicts. They start making things difficult. They start making things, well, it's like what Einstein said. Einstein observed that any educated idiot could make things more complicated, more difficult, and even more violent. He also observed that it takes a lot of courage and just a little bit of genius to move in the opposite direction. The historical or mythical record of the Buddha's life tells the story of his cousin Devadatta, who did just that. He forced himself into a position of authority, and once he was in that position, he started, he just increased the number of rules and made it oppressive for everybody, and everyone left him at a certain point because of that. It has been said that during the night of the inauguration of Barack Obama, some racist members of Congress had a meeting, and they boasted that they were going to oppose his every policy and simply act like the American Taliban. Those were their words. So there are always going to be people like that. People who if they feel they're not winning the checkers game, they're going to toss the board and the pieces akimbo. The author, Gaurav Dorje, reminds us we don't need rules. We just need meditation and love, the fruit of meditation. Let's continue. Appearances, symbols of the all good, never change into something other than presence. Never being other than presence, appearances are therefore wisdom. In the absence of grasping, that thing has a self-identity. Absent rejecting, there is only the equality that transcends speech. All good is an English translation of the Tibetan term Kuntu Zangpo, or the Sanskrit name Samantabhadra, or all good one, which is a metaphor for the fact that whatever comes up, we can release it during our next exhalation. Therefore, playfully, whatever comes up, oh baby, it's all good. Presence here is a synonym for mindfulness, being fully present in the moment, regardless of what comes up. Whether what comes up is a circumstance, or a physical phenomena, or an interpersonal phenomena, or a mental phenomena. We can be present for it. We can be vulnerable to it. We can let the present moment slap us about the head and shoulders. For whatever we notice as we breathe in, by relaxing as we breathe out, we viscerally experience the wisdom of release. Therefore, as we let go in harmony with our relaxing, it can feel like whatever we perceived during our previous in-breath was as non-graspable as if it was not us. And now let's prepare, or I should say, in preparation for meditation, I'm going to take a moment to introduce myself. This is Lama Jigme Gyatso of the Buddha Joy Meditation School. Welcome to Meditate Like a Jedi, which is made possible due to the generosity of viewers just like you. Here at the Buddha Joy Meditation School, I've explored every school of Buddhism and have endured every roadblock and obstruction, so you won't have to. Let's take a moment to chant empathetic bodhicitta and enthusiastic refuge. May I liberate all beings from the tyranny of hating, craving, and clinging by relying on the Buddha's example, instructions, and students. And now the concise bookend chant. May I liberate all beings by relying on the three jewels. May I liberate all beings by relying on the three jewels. May I liberate all beings by relying on the three jewels. We've already explored the meditation instructions, so let's jump right in. Welcome to this evening's practice. If at any point you have a specific question about Buddhist philosophy, Buddhist meditation, or how to apply them to your life, simply type your question in great detail in the chat window. I check for questions approximately once every 7 to 9 minutes. As you breathe in, instead of actively concentrating, we can perceive vulnerably, passively, and viscerally and randomly, as silently and mentally we recite the demonstrative pronoun this. As we exhale, due to the workings of our parasympathetic nervous system, we could physically relax and mentally release. Therefore, during each exhalation, we could silently and mentally recite the monosyllabic verb ease, which functions as a synonym of relax. Why did Anakin fall to the dark side? Because due to his CPTSD, due to his borderline personality disorder, although he was very good at noticing as he breathed in, he kept forgetting to relax and release as he breathed out. Vulnerability without release ends in tears. Let us seal this practice with a bit of the old chanting. May all beings practice of kind communication, conduct, and calmness were spontaneous and uncontrived. May everyone be free from misery. May everyone be happy. May no one be separated from the happiness. May everyone have balance from the tyranny of hating, craving, and clinging freed. If you feel that I have earned it, you could give this a thumbs up or even help support this channel on Patreon. In approximately 11 hours, I would very much like to return to lead tomorrow's early morning meditation class and practice. And if you are as geeky as me, this is the way.